there was this high-level meeting between Xi Jinping and Putin before the invasion of Ukraine. I wonder what China thinks of Russia's invasion. What do you feel like this is a stress point for them? And what should we understand about the nature of China's relationship with Russia?
I think Russia's invasion of Ukraine has stuck China in a super difficult dilemma. And so two big parts of the dilemma are, on the one hand, they are seeking over the long term a closer relationship with Russia and some kind of long-term alignment. It is not at the point of like a China-Russia alliance, which is one of the pretty popular and dominant narratives that's out there, that China and Russia are already allied. They are not in an alliance. That their relationship is quite far away from that level of closeness and coordination. But China is looking for a longer term alignment with Russia. It's important to understand why. It is because they, for some very good reason, believe that they are up against a US-led bloc that includes the US and Europe, and that this US-led bloc is out to contain China and undermine China's rise, undermine China's economy and power, and so on. And they're seeing that as like a long-term problem. And if they're up against this powerful, extremely powerful US-led bloc, they have a choice. Do we go up against that alone? Or do we try to recruit Russia as another very powerful ally that can stand with us against this US-led bloc? So on the one hand, because of the way that the US under Trump and now under Biden has signaled that this is the future that Chinese leaders can look forward to, they are seeking this long-term alignment with Russia, which could lead in the direction of an alliance. Like a China-Russia alliance is not here, but things could be headed in that direction, which I think is a pretty terrifying and dangerous prospect. So on the one hand, that is part of the agenda, I think, for China's leaders. On the other hand, they do not right now want to go all in with Russia and just forsake, which would then mean forsaking their relationships with the US and with Europe and other US allies. One very material and compelling reason for that in their minds is that they need the economic ties. They do not have some alternative economic model yet that's going to allow them to allow China to prosper without these strong economic ties to the US and Europe. And so they need to sustain that. So they're trying to sort of, they would like to chart kind of a middle course that is keeping Russia as a potential ally down the road, without going so far in that direction that they're going to piss off the US and Europe enough to say get hit by the sanctions that they're now imposing on Russia.
Right.
So they're trying to chart this middle path, but it's like really tricky for them to do that.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, I think it's anyone trying to touch Russia at this point is difficult, but it is kind of, it's very chicken or the egg, I think, or in terms of, I don't know if that's the right phrasing for this, but basically, like, in the same way that we understand that I think NATO needs to shift and change and not be the necessarily same alliance, and that like it does not excuse what the war crimes that are happening, but it did sort of seemingly box Russia in. We should also take this lesson to say, well, let's not box China in so that war and lashing out is the only option anymore. Like, how do we learn from this situation in Russia and apply it differently to China? I guess I wanted to ask you, in terms of both regionally with China and then internationally, like, what is its role? And I realize this this is more geopolitical, and then I want to get to sort of like what we can all do and think about. But in terms of like, I was reading some reports that China was thinking of annexing Taiwan like in August or something, trying to make a push. And that with Russia doing their little push or big push, they were like, ooh, maybe we won't do this. So what does this signal when it comes to sort of regional influence and muscle? What does this signal to China? Are they, what does that mean for them?
Yeah, I think so. When it comes to Taiwan, Taiwan's really a special case when it comes to China's ambition because of nationalism in China has become very powerful, a very powerful political force. It's something that Xi Jinping and the ruling class of China has been using to build their popular legitimacy.
Right.
As we've seen in countries around the world, including the US, nationalism is a growing force. And this claim on Taiwan that Taiwan belongs to China and that like that is a very central part of Chinese nationalism. And that's real, and that includes threats of violence against Taiwan in order to stop what they see as a movement towards Taiwanese independence.
Right.
That's a real threat. I think there is still like a lot of threat inflation there, though. Like people will talk about a Chinese invasion of Taiwan being like right around the corner. Like I think this is maybe what you're referring to, like narratives last year.
Yeah.
That's a real over exaggeration of where the Chinese government is at, and it doesn't take into account the very powerful incentives that Chinese leaders have to like not engage in that sort of thing. It would be economically devastating to China, diplomatically devastating. It would cause a lot of unrest within China. Like a lot of the Chinese populace would react negatively to that, assuming that there's any sort of like cost to the Chinese military as a result of an invasion. Like there's a lot of domestic and international risks that the Chinese leadership is responsive to, and I think there's an important distinction between China and Russia, where like Putin in Russia has gone very far in the direction of what I would call like a neo-fascist ideology, which is not fully rational, like it's not fully responsive to what we think of as like rational considerations. Like invasion of Ukraine is a disaster, and he's going to keep doing it anyways. Like because he's got this ideological commitment, doesn't think like Ukraine's a legitimate nation, whatever. Nationalism in China is also very strong, but I think that Chinese leadership at the moment is still there's still a strong strain of pragmatism in the Chinese leaders, among Chinese leaders, so that they're not going to rashly engage in some action against Taiwan that's going to destroy China's international relationships and the Chinese economy. So Taiwan's a very like this special and like really difficult case.
Sure. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.